Hello there, and welcome to Nebraska Football Now. I'm your host, Andy Classen, joined by our Husker Insider, Jake Bartecki. Jake, how are we doing?
Doing great, Andy. You know, we're getting closer and closer to football season. Big Ten Media Days are around the corner. Training camp will be here before we know it. It's great to be here. Glad to be part of the show.
Well, let's hop right into it then and talk about what matters most to a lot of Husker fans, recruiting. And it feels good to talk about the running back position at Nebraska, Makai Nelson. What do you know about him?
Well, he was the 11th rated player by 24/7 Sports in Connecticut and the 66th ranked running back in the country. I think it provides Nebraska a lot of depth at that certain position, and he's a guy that had a really strong day at the Under Armour camp in New Jersey. As far as what you see from him as a player, he's got a lot of speed. He's also got the ability to run somebody over, but I think what I liked most about him from what I saw on film is while he can run guys over, he can just blow past competition that is overmatched by him. So I think when you look at that room, that's been a question mark for Nebraska. They haven't had a number one guy at the pass. Now they have a lot of options.
Yeah, he seems like one of those versatile guys that, like you said, he could make a move, get around a guy, or go through a guy. Is he kind of the quintessential, kind of player that a Matt Rhule is looking for as far as his recruiting philosophy, his strategy?
Yeah, I mean, he's a top 15 player in that state. Obviously, Connecticut's a smaller state, but anytime you're a top 100 player at a position in the country ranked by a place like 24/7 Sports, you're doing something right. So I think the philosophy, and I'm sure we'll talk about this later on with Matt Rhule, is he wants every player he can get that's got the skill that matches what he's looking to do with the program. And I think Makai Nelson fits that breed.
Are we seeing a little bit of the trickle down of the Raiola effect? I mean, he's a first five-star quarterback Nebraska's had in a long time. I feel like we're already seeing an impact not only on the field, which is yet to be seen, but off the field with getting more 4- and 5-star recruits, at least on campus.
Yeah, I think that's what happens when you get somebody to the caliber of a Dylan Raiola, is you're going to see other players want to play alongside him. And the thing with Raiola that I really like is I think it solves a big problem Nebraska had in the past. And just look back to last year for this issue, they had a lot of question marks at quarterback. I mean, in some games last year, we saw them play 3 different guys. I mean, if it was Heinrich Haarberg, Jeff Sims, or Chubba Purdy. You go back to the year before, Casey Thompson was banged up. You saw Logan Smothers and Chubba Purdy. And obviously, you go back to Adrian Martinez and the issues that you had around there. I think Raiola gives you the certainty of having somebody who's ready to make a jump for a program in the Big Ten, and that's something Nebraska hasn't had. And because of that, you're going to see guys like Makai Nelson come in and want to play alongside him.
Exactly. And with that, expectations are always on the rise, and they're high enough at Nebraska anyhow. People are making, 8 wins, 9 wins, predictions. To have a good season, you have to get off to a good start.
Sure.
So what do you feel would be a good start for Nebraska?
Well, I think a great start is 6-0. I mean, you play those first 3 non-conference games, UTEP, Colorado, Northern Iowa. I think probably the biggest one is Colorado. I mean, that's a Power 5 school. We know that's a night game. That's a rivalry. You should be able to beat UTEP. You should be able to beat Northern Iowa. And then you play teams to the likes of Illinois, Indiana, Purdue, and Rutgers right after that. So I think 6-0 is what you got to expect for a great start. I think 5-1 is a decent start. Maybe you have some problems against Colorado. Maybe you lose to Purdue on the road, or Illinois somehow gets you at home. I think 5-1 is a decent start. I think you're looking pretty doom and gloom if you start that first 6 stretch 4-2, because then right after that you're punched in the mouth with Ohio State, with USC, UCLA, and then you end the season as you have the last few years with Wisconsin and Iowa. So if you start 4-2, you're looking at probably not much more than bowl eligible. And I think this team, with the players they have, the defense that they had last year, Raiola, I think you got to expect better than that.
So let's cut right to the chase. Is 10 wins feasible? Is it possible this year for Nebraska?
Well, I mean, the short answer is yes. Okay. But I think you have to have a lot of things go your way. You're going to have all of your key players stay healthy. You have to have your main running back, whoever that might be, stay healthy. Dylan Raiola is going to have to stay healthy the entire year. Jamal Banks, the guys that are going to be catching the ball from him on the offense, have to stay healthy. The other things that I think need to play into effect are You need to cut down on penalties because that's been a problem for Nebraska in the past. Cut down on turnovers. I mean, we remember the turnover problem last year with Raiola. You'd think that'd be the case. Fumbling, hopefully that's better. Marcus Satterfield's worked a lot with those guys on that front. But the two biggest things I think that are the question marks is the offensive line has to be way better than it was last year. And the defense, I think, and they were a top 5 defense in the conference and for much of the year nationally, I think they have to be just as good as they were last year, if not better.
Well, speaking of that defense, let's go right into one of those position groups, catching a lot of headlines over the summer here, and that is the secondary. Have some big gaps, some big shoes to fill. Let's start with Quinton Newsome. How does Nebraska account for his departure?
I think they're actually going to be okay. I mean, Quinton Newsome was a strong, solid cornerback, but I think a lot of what people liked is he had so much experience. I mean, he'd been playing since he was a freshman, but because of that, he had a lot of time to groom guys like Tommy Hill, Blyhill, Malcolm Hartzog. I mean, those are probably your main guys in the secondary, and obviously Isaac Gifford's been there for a while too. But Tommy Hill has really kind of turned into a more dynamic cornerback and defensive back. You even see him in different parts of the scheme as well. So I think Quinton Newsome's had time to groom those guys, which is really helpful. And I think what Tommy Hill, somebody like him, kind of brings is, he's a great defender, but I also think he can blitz and have an impact in the pass rush when they do bring a corner blitz.
For some of these younger guys that are starting to fill out the room, how important is a guy like Gifford?
Isaac Gifford is huge. I mean, he's one of the guys that led in snap count last year, single-digit number guy, so was Quinton Newsome. I think he is going to be somebody that defense leans on a lot, along with Nash Hutmaker and Ty Robinson and those kind of guys. So all of those leadership guys that could be captains for this team, Isaac Gifford included, are going to be very important, not just because of their skill, because I think Isaac Gifford's really talented, but also just that experience and being able to have someone to lean on that's got a lot of time on the field.
Now, Jake, you're at all the press conferences. Matt Rhule, Coach Rhule, always has some great one-liners. What was your biggest takeaway from his most recent press conference that you attended?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest takeaway I have is that he expects to win this year. I mean, I can't pinpoint one specific sentence because I think the entire press conference is that this team now expects to be competitive. They don't want just 6 wins. And I go back to the press conference after the, I believe it was the Purdue game last year when Nebraska got to 5 wins. He talked about walking off the field and a fan yelling down at him, "Just one more, coach, just one more." And his response to that in the press conference was, well, why just one more? You know, I want to win. Of course, we know what happened after that. But this is the thing. You look at last year, Nebraska was maybe 2 or 3 touchdowns away from being a 7, 8, and maybe go a few touchdowns beyond there, a 9-win football team. So, you know, I think his expectation is to win now. His expectation is to get the best players into Lincoln, and we'll see if it shapes out.
I love the expectations, and I always love raising the bar with Nebraska football. Jake, thank you for your time and joining us here today.
You bet. Thanks, Andy.
For Nebraska Football Now, I'm your host, Andy Classen.